This is basically the power supply and power supply filters, and I don't want to touch it, it might still be charged. It's a new piece. The old piece started developing problems, and I was going to show the old piece and I forget where I put it. Oh, I know where it is. I'll be right back. Here is the old piece. Anybody that works in electronics and works with electrolytics probably already knows that electrolytic capacitors should not be inside a box that is almost sealed. I think what happened was that they would heat up, and when summertime got here, the humidity and the moisture would work its way in when it cools down after it's turned off. Then when it gets turned on again, it wouldn't dry out in time. This new one, being on a perf board, is better ventilated even when the cover is on. Which one? Here is the cover. This is needle point stuff I got at Walmart. And there are 3 covers. There is a cover that fits this section as well. I don't know if that's in the picture. It should be in there now. This is a K12 8-watt push-pull tube amp. It comes in a kit form. I forget where I got it. I think I got it from AES, which is American Electronic Supply. It's tubesandmore.com. I think Amazon also sells a similar kit, but if you look up the 8-watt push-pull tube amp kit, you should be able to find it on the web. This is the 8-watt version. It's mono. There is also a stereo version that has 4 tubes. There are also 16-watt mono and stereo versions of them. This also has a cover on it and fits like this. And there's the knob on it. These knobs, by the way, are replacement knobs for a Fender Strat. It's convenient because that says volume. It's marked 1 to 10. Although I have never had this turned up past 3. I think the gain is too high, or maybe it's an audio taper or something. And these 2 up here are marked tone. Now that's probably not in the shot. It kind of is. Over here is a what started out as a mid-range control. Has very little effect. It worked with just it started with a Zobel network. This is a coil, this is a capacitor and a resistor, and I couldn't get the effect I wanted. I wanted to just make a slight mid-range cut, and since it didn't work, I just disconnected it, but the part is still there in case I want to work with it later on. So let's see, I covered the power supply, but this amp has its own power supply. This is a transformer. It wasn't supposed to go here. This is another design error. It was supposed to be down in this compartment. I don't know if you can see that compartment. Wait a minute. It was supposed to be down in here. Now this, I left the cover on. There are 2 transformers in there. One of them goes to this power supply. The other one is the speaker transformer that goes to the amp. The speaker transformer is supposed to go here. But since this was too big, this wound up going there. Another design error. Over here, this was not a kit. I searched high and low on the internet for a 1-channel tube preamplifier, something not very complicated. It doesn't have to be extreme high-end fidelity. I found schematics for these very elaborate 8 and 10 tube jobs that needed its own power generator to run it. That's an exaggeration. I finally found a schematic diagram. That's all I had, was a schematic. So I built one from the ground up. My prototype, it worked, but it made a lot of noise. I didn't think to shield it. This one has copper foil shielding and a star ground point. All of the components underneath the tube meet at this one star ground. That's what they call it. Anybody that's worked with preamps or has built microphone preamps for PA systems probably understands the importance of shielding and grounding and tying all the ground wires at one point to reduce any flow. This is the ground terminal from the turntable, and this is the output that goes into this amp. This is for a low capacitance cable. It's actually a component video cable. I bought a component video cable that had 6 plugs, 3 on each end, cut it in half, and I rewired every turntable I owned with it. What inspired the speaker design? The grill cloth. I had trouble. It's still baggy and falling off in places. It's an 8-inch full range speaker with a crossover. I wanted to use an 8-inch woofer, but they didn't make one that had a good enough mid-range, and I wanted to keep it a 2-way. So the 8-inch speaker takes up this compartment. This used to be a port opening. It's been closed off on the inside because I changed it several times. And this wood trim, that tuning fork, was inspired by something I saw in a funeral parlor about 10 years ago that hadn't been remodeled in years. It had lots of old woodwork, and the speakers that were built into the walls were grill cloth and wood, and I wanted something that looked like it. So I'll turn it around. The other light panel, this is another design error. The Velcro that holds these panels in keeps them from fitting flush. Well, it'd be kind of hard to remove if they weren't, but by some miracle, they don't rattle and buzz. Now back to the back. I wanted to point out the speaker that's in it, and let's see, can you see this? Probably wondering what the red thing is at the bottom. The original panel was closed because it had a port tube for a bass reflex port. At some point I shortened the tube, and somehow I didn't like the sound, so I closed off the tube. This was the original back panel, and I just cut a port opening. This is more of that needle point stuff, and just made a port opening, put it in the back. This changed the sound dramatically. In fact, when I had the cover off, I even fired it up and listened to records with no cover at all. It played loud. It didn't sound very good, but it had no bass at all. This was kind of a compromise. With this cover on, I had some lower, mostly lower mid-range, and some very little bass, but the lowest end of the mid-range was louder, and particularly drums, the bass drum had more kick and thump to it. But I kind of missed having what little bottom end bass it was putting out. So this was a daring experiment. I cut another panel, and this is a funnel I got at Walmart for 84 cents. And I cut a hole about 2 inches, the same diameter as the port opening, but otherwise it's not by the book. This was just guesswork. This is about 7.5 inches in diameter, and I figured I had nothing to lose because I still had this panel, and if even so, I could still cut a new piece. There are 6 screws that hold this. But I put it on, and I recovered the low end bass I had, and I still have that kick to the drums. So I like it so much, I don't see any need to further tweak that. So anyway, there it is, the baritone, the machine designed to play old scratchy 45s and give them a second life. Although a lot of videos, I will sit a turntable up on top and just disconnect these 2 things and plug that turntable into there.